Hi and welcome to my channel, Glamour Goosebumps, where we talk about all the weird, the creepy, and the unexplained. In today's episode, I will be taking you through the UFOs in Brazil, specifically Operation Saucer that happened in 1977. I will be giving you loads and loads of evidence for you to be able to draw your own conclusion from, and I hope that after you watch this video, you're just, really sat thinking, do UFOs exist? Are they real? And yeah, so that's what we're here to do. As you know, I tell a story while I do my makeup at the same time. This is the featured look for today. She's quite pretty, went for more of a sunset look because chupa chupa. You'll learn about that in this video. And yeah, so if you guys like my videos and want to know more, you can like and subscribe. I put up videos every Monday and Thursday, and I really try to give you your spook fix for the week. So if you want to know any of the beauty products I'm using, they will be linked in the description box below, and all the evidence as well, so that you can, just cite my sources and know that what I'm telling you is truthful, real, and factual. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and go to Brazil. And you can see for yourself what you think of these UFOs and Operation Saucer. In 1954, Brazil was actually the very first country to acknowledge the presence of UFOs. Contrary to belief that France was the first, it was actually Brazil. So 1954 would come along and they would actually send out a survey to their people. And the survey would essentially just be asking them, have you ever seen a UFO? Where was it? Blah, blah, blah. And then also to, if they had any evidence or anything like that. And so this survey was in the 50s, right? And, this was really a time when they started to receive a lot of just encounters and experiences and sightings and reports that were being, sent to the government. With lots of persistence, the UFO Freedom of Information Act would be passed, and along with this passing, there would start to be a lot more information trickle down as far as government documents and things that have been kept a secret up until now. And, unlike the US government, like I said, Brazil isn't really trying to say that UFOs don't exist. They believe that they do, and there's a lot of evidence on their government page that actually tells you of sightings and reports. Well, the story that we're going to talk about that is, declassified and available for you to be able to look up and research. I will say that a lot of these documents are in Portuguese, so I have been spending so much time on Google Translate making sure it's right. But the story that we're going to talk about is actually called Operation Saucer. And Operation Saucer would conduct in 1977, and yeah, so here's the story. Between September and December of 1977, the people of Cakeless, which is a, very rural kind of village in by the Amazon River, they would go to the government after experiencing what they deemed to be attacks by some type of UFO or alien or something from the sky. So they would go to the government and they would have burn marks, puncture wounds, and, a lot of physical evidence showing that there is some type of, issue going on in Cakeless. So they would ask and beg for military assistance to help them because they feared for their lives. UFOs would be stalking people day and night. They didn't just leave their stalk to the nighttime. So during the day, even people had to be worried and had to be scared to leave their home, which is so sad, right? Like, you can't leave your home because you're afraid of this thing coming down and getting ya. So this town would really go into, just almost isolation, where they would all kind of collect in a home, trying to keep themselves safe. The people would call these lights chupa chupa, and chupa chupa translate to sucker sucker. And that was really just because they felt like these lights were actually sucking the life from them, is what they said. That they were actually sucking and removing blood. And so they called them chupa chupa because they felt them just kind of almost taking their vitality away. Which is so, so scary. After chupa chupa would attack them, they would get these puncture wounds all over their body, and these puncture wounds were really isolated kind of in their torso area and upper body area, and then they would have these burn marks which were thought to be like radiation burns on their body. It was painful and it hurt, and like I said, they would start to get kind of sick and anemic and feel like their light source had been taken from them. So of course, you know, there was a doctor at the time, her Dr. Kavaya, and she would go there and, you know, she would go to kind of tend to these patients, of course, not believing that they were experiencing any type of aerial phenomenon or these, not believing the Chupa Chupa story. So she would go there and she would conduct her research. She would treat about 1,000 patients, and upon treating these patients, she would find that out of 1,000 patients, 400 of them tested positive for blood loss, for anemia. She also found that these burns on their body were radiation burns, and after talking to the people, she was convinced as well that something really sinister was going on in that village. Unfortunately, 4 people would die, and countless livestock, cows, horses, and dogs, any animal that was attacked by these lights would unfortunately succumb to their injuries, and they would perish. So a village that would have 10,000 residents would be reduced to only 1,000 people because 9,000 people would leave and flee for fear of their life. So if that doesn't tell you something, if you're leaving your home, place of work, you definitely know that something serious is happening, especially if you're willing to leave everything to protect your family. Those 1,000 people that would end up staying would go to the government and beg for help and assistance. They just really feared for their life, and they wanted, some help. And so the government would send 36 men to help them and to help kind of protect them during this time. And also too, just to know if they were like full of it or not. Cause like at this time, the government was like, yeah, right, this is not happening. There's no way that you guys are being attacked by aliens, because they had never heard of anything like this before. Again, we're in the 70s, 1977. And so, it would be smart of them to investigate, but then also too, to not think that this is like, fully real. Like, you're just finding out. Captain, who is Cornell, would be put in charge. And by the way, very sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. I don't speak Portuguese, so bear with me if I pronounce anything wrong on this. I really don't mean to. I'm sorry. So he would be put in charge of these 36 men, but what's crazy is after 3 months, this case would end up being closed and be considered classified by the Brazilian government, and wonder why. Now, we probably would have, never truly known the full story of what took place that day if Weyes didn't end up doing an interview almost 20 years later with AJ and Marco. They are in charge of the Brazilian UFO magazine that's there, and the story that he would tell them would be extremely captivating and convincing. In his interview, he discussed that during his time in Cakeless, they had gathered over 500 photographs, 16 hours of video footage, and 2,000 first-hand accounts of what had taken place from the villagers. So during the day, what they would do is they would use that time to talk to the villagers and gain more information on like what they had experienced. And then at nighttime, they would use radar tracking devices to track anything going on in the sky or any aerial phenomenon that they would, experience or see. And so, yeah, they got a lot of footage, guys, and they got a lot of information that really corroborated exactly what these people were saying in Cakeless, that they were being attacked by these aliens. And so this is where it gets really crazy. So the reason why the actual program was shut down was because of Wea's personal testimony of an experience that he had on the river. So one night the captain was on the Guadalajara River, and while he was on the river, he was in an aluminum boat with one people that was part of his platoon. And so when he was in this aluminum boat, he was crossing the river at that time to get to the other side of camp that he had made with his men. So as he's crossing, both men look up and they see this 100-meter by 100-meter ship hovering above the ground. And this is where Weyes claims to see an alien come from the top of the ship and almost float down to the lower level of the ship. He said that the alien had been wearing like almost like a helmet, like a visor, and had like a white uniform on. He also said that the alien did not make contact with him. So he didn't talk to the alien, not even telepathically, but I think that he was so afraid that he quickly got out of there. The next morning, the captain would go to his commanding officer and tell him everything that he saw, even drawing pictures and showing him evidence of what he had experienced. The commanding officer at the time would be very intrigued by his story, and would take 3 days to respond to weigh us on like what course of action to take moving forward. The captain and his team would be asked to close down their investigation indefinitely and be asked to leave the area that they were conducting their research on, never to return or speak of the instances that took place ever again. Unfortunately, a few days after he would give this interview with AJ and Marco, he would ultimately commit suicide. And you know, there's some conspiracy theories saying was he killed, but you know, the reality is he had already given that information, you know, in that televised interview. So what was the reason for, you know, him to be killed then if he had already released that information? And you know, that's the story of the 1977 Cakeless attacks in Brazil. So yeah, you can definitely join, you know, your own conclusion as to what you think maybe happened that day. But what I will say is, if you have all the documents and the evidence that I've kind of shown you up here, and you know, you can go on the government page and research it for yourself too, just to, you know, check my credibility. I would say that you kind of have to question, like, if the Brazilian government isn't questioning whether or not these entities exist, if they're real, and really you just have our government just now coming forward saying that they are real. It's I think it's a little strange that we still have so many non-believers in existence. I'm sure that those people just probably haven't done enough research. And I just have to say that after, you know, reading all of these declassified information, of course, in Portuguese, having to translate it, you know, it just made it more real than ever that there is an imminent threat out there, and extraterrestrials aren't always so nice. And I think that I've kind of been in this delusion that they wouldn't hurt us, that they're here to investigate or here to kind of treat us almost like zoo creatures in a way. But the reality is that they can. They're very capable. And I think that's something that you should get the goosebumps about and definitely be a little terrified on. So I'll throw the question back out to you guys. What do you think? Do you think the 1977 Cakeless event is real? You know, I'd love for you to link in the comments below just anything that you'd love for, you know, me to dive deeper into. But yeah, so that's the story, guys. I hope you really enjoyed it. I hope that you have a spooky day. Bye.